On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what are the biggest storylines to follow for the Oklahoma City Thunder and the rest of the NBA this season?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and Thunder on SI beat writer Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO Thunderpod. Joining me today is Nick Crain at Crain NBA on Twitter, the father of Thunder on SI, the uncontested podcast everywhere in the world talking basketball. Nick, how are you doing today?
I am thrilled to be joining a show with somebody that is prestigious enough to be aggregated by Legion Hoops, NBA Central, Hoop Central, all of the above, with your phenomenal, groundbreaking story with Ronnie 2K.
The Ronnie 2K story was fun. It was interesting to even find out that he was a 2K fan in general, because of all the players on the team. I would not have expected that he was one of the players who plays 2K obsessively and texts Ronnie 2K about the video game. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, you could have said top 10 players, and he would not have made the top 10 list.
No, I mean, it's just a part of his life that he's never really put out there the way that Jay Will has and other players have made it known that they play video games. Shay's been very reserved at that aspect. But Nick, the NBA season is slowly coming around. This is the worst part of the NBA offseason. When you look at the NBA season coming up, everyone's expecting the Thunder to be very good, to win 57 games and to be the number one seed again, and to be true contenders. There's also going to be some ups and downs that go along with any NBA season. So I think that it's easy right now to paint this picture that things will be amazing for Oklahoma City, and I think that they mostly will be. But there's still going to be moments and stretches where they're not playing at their apex throughout the 82-game season.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. This Thunder team, to be better than it was last year, does not need to win 57 games. Doesn't need to be the number one seed, frankly. Like, would it be great and would it help in playoffs? Obviously. But this team could take a tangible step forward and win 54 games and claim the third seed in the West and be a better team. And this team's at a stage in its franchise life cycle where you should think that way. Like, the regular season's extremely important. But all that matters is the playoffs, right? Like, we saw the Mavs go to the Western Conference Finals last year as a 5 seed. Everyone's ragging on them for being the 5 seed during the playoffs. Who's ragging on them when they come out of the West, right? So it's about positioning yourself to have success in the postseason, much of which comes with strategy in the regular season, most notably with rest, which is maybe we think about the ups and downs of the season. I think about Chet Holmgren, who played 82 games last year, played more than 82 regular season games. It's a goal of his. He's admitted, were there some games he probably should have sat? Sure, but it was a goal, and I applaud him. That's a phenomenal accomplishment coming off an injury. We also saw him admit, and we saw it live, that his legs were not great throughout the season. He was short on jumpers, and his shot consistency was not there. And so I think not only will we see an up and down with the team, but with the players as well. But I do expect more consistency from guys like Chet Holmgren in year 2, because I think he will get more scheduled rest, which will be great for a player like him. And I think you'll see his percentages rise because of that. Just one example of ups and downs can be kind of macro and micro, but ultimately all that matters is the guys are fresh, healthy, and ready to make a playoff push.
Yeah, I think short of winning like 60 games, the win-loss record can be deceiving. I think that the way that you evaluate this Thunder team will be through the critical lens of do they look more ready to contend than they did a year ago, regardless of record, regardless of standing or anything like that. And Chet, you raise a great point about Chet Holmgren, who we were tracking all season long. Like, he plays so much better when he's rested. And like, yes, of course, after all the noise of missing his first year, playing 82 games plus every preseason game plus every playoff game, like, that was a massive deal for him. But now you can kind of save him from himself at times, because he admitted on the Woj pod that at times last year the Thunder wanted to rest him, and he won the battle, quote unquote battle of, like, he's convinced them to let him play. And so now you can say, well, look, we let you play all year last year. Here's where we think you could really benefit from some rest. Now, the Thunder are not going to go Clippers mode and like rest them every single back-to-back and go too far with it. But there's a little healthy medium there between never resting and then doing what the Clippers have done before. So I think that that's going to be an interesting part of this as well. And I also just think that there's just an element of it's going to be really hard to integrate all these pieces, these heavy minute-heavy, role pieces like Hartenstein, like Caruso into the mix. And the Thunder did a fantastic job of it last year. What they got lucky with last year was injury luck, obviously, but also the Thunder stayed true to themselves. They remained in roster exploration mode. They played 10, 11, 12 guys every single night, and they still won games. A couple bounces go differently. They led the league in second half comebacks. They led the league in these comeback stats. Like a couple of those bounces go differently, and you drop a game because you're looking for advantages that end up helping you later down the line, even if it doesn't help you by winning that game that specific night. So you can see them lose a game here where it actually benefited them to lose because they got to see and get data points on something else than just going all out for a win. And then if you play the same 8 guys every single night, you never know in the playoffs what you might need to utilize, and you don't want to be putting that on display for the very first time. So I think that like the ability to explore the roster will be a key for them as well. Plus, you can never count on the tremendous injury luck that they got last year with the 82-game season this year. But I think that the biggest thing that might be a little undersold is you're going to have to find your footing of Hartenstein, no matter what you do, playing with Chet, playing without Chet, start him, don't start him, whatever. Like that's going to take some time to figure out. Caruso, a more seamless fit, but still, Caruso's playing in a very crowded position as well. Like you're going to want to get minutes to Dort, Caruso, J-Dub, Cason, Wiggins. Like you're going to want to get minutes to all these guys, and there's only so many minutes to go around. How do you maneuver? How do you play? When do you deploy these guys? And what matchups and lineups do you use them in? These are some big questions that could result in quote-unquote losses. I mean, factual losses in the win column, loss column, but end up getting you bigger wins down the line to where you know for a fact what works and doesn't.
Yeah, I think two things that stick out about this Thunder team and last year's Thunder team that I think have to continue. Injury luck was phenomenal last year, and probabilities are not going to be the same this year. Like you're probably going to face some injuries. You hope it's not primary players. You hope it's not extended injuries. But the reality is, outside of significant season-ending injuries or injuries going into the playoffs, this team is deep enough to be very, very, very good, regardless of who goes down. Like it's got the depth. Frankly, there's some positions where it's like you just mentioned, how are you going to get these guys minutes? They're very capable, especially in the regular season, of being positive contributors. How are you going to get the minutes? So the team's deep enough. To me, what has to continue, irrespective of injury luck, fits, maybe a slow start, blurps in the road along the way. This Thunder team last year was really good at not accumulating losses. They did not go on long losing streaks. They lost games. They should have won. They won games they should have lost. But they weren't a team that ever went on like a 17-game winning streak. But they also weren't a team that went on 5-game losing streaks ever. And I think if you can just maintain that level of consistency, I almost would rather see a team like that than a team that has the long win streaks and the long losing streaks. Just flatline in the middle, do what you do. If you win 3 or 4 of every 5 or 6 games, you're going to be fine. And some of those wins are going to be wins that you're like, man, they should not have won that one. Sometimes it's going to be like, holy crap, how did you lose to the Pistons in February? It happens, but if you look at it big picture and maintain that level of consistency, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big thing last year. It took Shea missing games to go on a 3-game losing streak. Otherwise, the Thunder would have never lost 3 games in a row. And then so, like, the fact that your longest losing streak was 3 games, it was only a 3-game stint, is incredibly impressive. And that still just totaled out to 57 wins. And I say just, but it was not, that still was not hitting that 60-win mark or something jaw-dropping of that nature. I just think that this season, with the expectations that are out there for the Thunder, with how excited the fan base is, and with the fact that, everyone's picking them and everything else, it's not going to be as simple to give them a pass-fail grade next year as it has been the last couple of seasons. The 40 and 42 season, that was a no-brainer. They made a 15-win improvement, 17-win improvement. They did the same thing last year. Spoiler alert, they're not going to win 15-plus games from their win marker a year ago. Yeah. So they might actually regress a little bit technically in the win column, but they can still, even if they win only 55 games or 50 games even, they can still be a better team in terms of trying to win a championship than they were a year ago.
Yeah. My hot take on that comment, I don't think you grade the regular season pass fail. Like if you earn a top 4 seed and you're hosting in the first round, you're still pretty confident this roster has the chance to go the distance. I'm no longer grading regular, unless it's a horrible fail. Sure. If you're an 8 seed this year, something went very wrong. But if you're hosting a first round playoff series, I'm grading you on the playoffs. I'm not grading on the regular season.
Yeah, that's
Beyond
what teams
that,
put themselves at.
Yeah.
Is that this is about the postseason from now through the end of this core. It's about the postseason. It's about what you can do in that postseason. The benefit for the Thunder is, unlike some other teams, like they're still young enough to still care about the regular season to the point where they're going to rack up wins just by the nature of caring and trying every single night. But this team ultimately will be graded out by what they do in the postseason. Coming up, what are some storylines for the Thunder this season that has us very excited to follow along with, and what NBA storylines could impact the Thunder as well, all coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at eBay Motors. Check out eBay Motors today because they understand that passion, drive, and patience, that's the winning formula for a championship. It's also the formula to keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Nick Crain at Crain NBA, SI Thunder, SI Draft, the Uncontested Podcast, Forbes, everywhere in the world. Nick Crain is there talking basketball. This will be one of the most fun seasons in Thunder history. This is one of the most excited seasons that we've seen with this team. What is the biggest storyline that you're looking forward to following along with this season?
There's a lot, which is a good problem to have. Like when you have a team that has these expectations and a lot of levers you can pull to have success. I've got 2 I've been thinking about a lot. I don't know if I'd call them the biggest. So maybe answering your question in a different way here. Hope that's okay. Kenrich Williams, a guy, if we were podcasting on Locked On Thunder exactly a year ago, we were talking about him as this guy that teams have offered first-round picks for at the deadline, a guy that contenders believe moved the needle and can be a legit playoff piece, two-way upside, versatile on both ends, can play in the wing, can play undersized 5, like this really awesome player. Didn't have the greatest season last year. I don't think he's being talked about much at all. Like stories I read, podcasts I hear about, I don't hear about Kenrich Williams. I think that's one of the most underrated storylines of the season. I'm a believer in what he brings to the table. He's not going to be a starter, right? But I think that's a guy that we forget about, that when playoff time comes around, whether it's in the playoffs, because he's out of the rotation completely, or when we're entering the playoffs looking back at the regular season, I think Kenrich Williams was a difference maker in the 2024-25 season for the Thunder.
Wow. I think that whenever you look at this time last year, the conversation was totally different. Might have lingered into the regular season more than people might think, more than people might know. Of just look, it's a professional athlete. You hear all the time how back injuries, you never really recover from them. You just hope to try to maintenance them and maintain them. To suffer that at the very beginning of the season in training camp, that's got to have been hard on him to try to play through a whole NBA season like that for the first time. Now you've gone through an NBA season. You saw yourself get carved out of the rotation a bit down the stretch, and down the stretch of that season, he did look sluggish. He did look slow. He did look old out there at times, which is why I think he fell out of favor in that rotation. But he did still rear back his fastball against Dallas in Dallas, where he flipped the game by himself emotionally. So I think that now, what does he look like after an offseason to recuperate and to hopefully, if there was any lingering things with his back, get over that. That is a very interesting storyline to follow that I don't think is being talked about quite enough.
My second one, and I'm curious to hear some of yours as well, Rylan. Cason Wallace. Phenomenal rookie season. Like, maybe didn't get enough hype because if you didn't watch the Thunder, you didn't see the little things he did and didn't have the craziest stats. Phenomenal. Like, game-altering player, especially in the playoffs. Like, his defense on Kyrie, amazing for a rookie. Did he shut down Kyrie? No. Did he make Kyrie's life tough? Yes. And Kyrie would absolutely admit that. That said, it's going to be hard to play a bigger role this season for him with the addition of Alex Caruso. Now you're talking about Lou Dort and Alex Caruso, who are different players and play defense differently than he does, but still occupy the same kind of role and archetype, if you will, as a defensive stopper and a pesky defender. He'll still play a huge role. Like, he was 6th in minutes last year in the regular season, 5th in minutes in the playoffs. But it's hard to go up from here when you add a piece like Caruso. And so I'm just super curious. I think he'll be good this season. I think he's going to have to be phenomenal to take another step forward. Maybe offensively, we'll see more from him. He kind of got out of his shell a bit in the playoffs and was making some big shots. But from like a role standpoint and from an impact standpoint, it's going to be tough for him. He'll find ways. But what do you think about his ability to take like that sophomore leap, given the potential boundaries he kind of has to get outside of his shell?
I think that his sophomore leap, when it comes to, if you just look up his basketball reference page, I think that it stems from, do they tap into him more as a point guard with his point guard background? Something that Sam Presti teased a little bit after the Josh Giddey trade. If he does, fall back into that role and he is really helping initiate and facilitate that secondary unit, then there's an element where he does, get downhill more, and that helps his scoring. He facilitates more, and that helps his assist numbers. And so you can see those per game stats climb a bit to where it's more noticeable of his development. But I honestly think that his development will be just for those who watch the game. I think he'll get better. It's just a matter of, I don't think he'll get better in the sense of everyone in the world knows it. I think he'll understand defense more. He'll understand what it's like in the NBA now, the speed of the game and how to stay in front and how to avoid fouls, which he did a really good job as a rookie. So I can only imagine how much better he'll look this next season. But I don't think that there's enough room for him unless he does get on-ball opportunity to take a massive leap offensively. I think offensively, it'll look much of the same, of just like a really savvy cutter and a 3-and-D kind of guy. But I am curious to see if they actually do get back into that point guard role, because even before the Josh Giddey trade, that's something that Mark hinted at during the actual season. He hinted at how like Cason still has that ability. It's just that they haven't gotten to send him to the Blue to work on it because he's been too invaluable to the Thunder. Yeah. Now you've had a whole summer to work on it. Like, can they get back there to his point guard roots? If they can, then you could see a massive leap. But short of that, I wouldn't necessarily think a massive leap is coming offensively.
Yeah. What storylines are you looking forward to?
Well, one of them is just an absolute layup, and that's just Isaiah Hartenstein, of like, what's real, what's fake. Because I think that people have gotten themselves all spun into a lot of different conversations. Number one, does he start or not? You have the crowd who thinks that there's no way that they just paid him this much money to not start. You have the crowd that thinks he's going to for sure come off the bench to Chet Holmgren. Where does it end up at as the season progresses? And number two, him hammering home his ability to shoot the basketball at his intro presser. Sam even talking about how this is still a 26-year-old with room to grow and to expand his game. And we know how Mark is very liberal with giving guys opportunities to expand their game beyond what the common folks see in it. So I think that what does it look like when it's on the court? Like, was it a New York thing? Does he want to just launch threes? the thing is, like, even before New York, his career high was 32 threes in a season. So, like, I'm not sure that it was everyone in the world holding him down and just a Tom Thibodeau thing. I think that maybe that's just not part of his game, but he is 26. So what if he just starts shooting threes all of a sudden now? What does that look like? What does that change for him? Because obviously, the more threes you shoot as a big man, the more your efficiency numbers are going to go down. Like, even if you're a good 3-point shooter, it's just a more risky shot than just cleaning up inside the arc. And you have the element of he's the best screener on the team, bar none. So that should open up opportunities for himself and others to get easy shots. How many minutes do you want to play with him doing something other than that with his playmaking off the pick and roll as well? So what does it look like in terms of minutes and rotation? Also, what does it look like in terms of shot selection and shot diet? Because there's a crowd that thinks he's going to just start launching them. There's also a crowd that thinks it'll be much of the same.
I think it's going to be in the middle. I don't think that the objective of his own want and desire, nor the way that Oklahoma City wants him to play is going to be go take 4 threes a game. I also think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't have him shooting any threes. I think the perfect middle ground is he takes a 3-pointer and a half a game. So basically, like every 2 games, he takes 3 threes. The percentage doesn't matter to me that much. It just needs to be high enough. The defense has to respect him, because if the defense knows in the scouting report, if we leave him wide open, he will take it and he will potentially make it. That just changes the way you defend a team. Whereas if you know he's not going to take it, you don't have to defend it, right? So it has to be enough of an edge where it changes the way the defense guards him on the perimeter. I don't care much about, like, is he going to be a productive 3-point shooter? I also don't want him to be a guy that doesn't shoot at all. It's just got to be this happy medium where it benefits the team regardless of the points generated by himself shooting the 3.
Yeah, I don't think that he will go on a 3-point rampage. I think that kind of negates what he does best. I also don't think that he'll only take 2 of them or 3 of them as he did last year. So I would agree it will be somewhere in the middle. I think that even if you look into those seasons where he shot 30, though, it wasn't as though like plays were drawn up for him and they were taken all the time. They were taken whenever the score was in blowout territory. They were taken in the fourth quarter. I think that changes just a tad. Like, maybe you see some more purposeful threes, but overall, it's going to be what we talk about a lot in August, and it turns into sort of a non-factor once training camp's over and preseason's over with, because I could totally see us falling in love with shooting videos of Isaiah Hartenstein shooting threes at Thunder Ion, posting them all over Twitter, getting the likes for it, and then it never really ends up coming to anything that matters in a real game. And then as far as like the starting aspect of it, I think right now that the starting 5 will be Shea, Caruso, Dort, Dub, and Chet. But I do think that there's going to be less rigidity to that. I don't think that lineup will start 218 straight games, and I like the other one did. And I think that whenever you look at this Thunder team, it's based upon being flexible. It's based upon versatility, and so with that comes the ability to mix and match. I think that last year Chet and Jay will only played 2% of their minutes together. The Chet with another big will play more than 2%. Mm-hmm. But again, I think the truth's in the middle, like you said, where it's not going to be now 50% or like 60%. They're still going to want to go small. They still view Chet as a center. This is just an aid to help you out, because last year, if you had a quality backup center, no offense to Jay Will, you win that Mavericks series, you're in the conference finals, and then you see what happens.
Yeah. My last comment on Isaiah. Instead of falling in love with this idea of him shooting threes, let's just fall in love with the idea of him setting an awesome screen, doing a short roll, catching and hitting that beautiful lefty mid-range floater that almost never misses, because that's what you're going to see, not a bunch of 3-pointers.
And that floater is nice. You should go look it up today to get you in the mood for some basketball. But Nick, coming up, some more Thunder storylines and some general NBA storylines that could impact OKC. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Nick Crain at Crain NBA, SI, Thunder, draft, everything in the world. Forbes, the Uncontested Podcast. Nick, another Thunder storyline I have for this team is, what does the leap look like for Chet and J-Dub. I think that we trust these two guys with their work ethic and with what we know about them to get better. It's just how it looks. And so it's taking Chet first. I think that Chet can make a leap just by association of if Shea and J-Dub just simply get better as pick and roll passers, Chet will take a massive leap. And it won't necessarily be anything that Chet's doing differently. It'll be that he got better facilitators to give him the ball and pick and roll and give him the ball earlier in those actions as well. And then what he can do on his own accord is instead of looking to pass first, being more assertive, understanding, hey, I'm one of the top 3 guys on this roster. I should take this shot over a smaller defender, something that he's talked about addressing this offseason and being more comfortable there. Nick, you remember when we had these same conversations about Shea of like, Shea needs to be more quote unquote selfish and needs to take, shots and understand, hey, your contested shot is better than a tail mouth on open 3. And like Shea had to learn that too. And now Shea is a front runner for MVP this year. So like these things happen with young players. I think that those two things, though, will be a massive reason why Chet takes a step forward as a sophomore.
Yeah, we saw it with Porzingis in the playoffs. Not that Chet should go watch that film and learn the same moves per se. But Boston found ways to just simply exploit teams that were going to put smaller players on him, on Porzingis. He'd catch it on the elbow. He'd face up. He'd either drop it down to a cutter or he'd just shoot over you. And it was unguardable in the NBA finals. Chet, I fully expect him to have 2 or 3 go-to moves. If you're going to put a smaller player or a guard on him, you're going to get punished.
Yeah, Chet absolutely has to take advantage of those smaller guards, and then just the opportunities that come his way where he gets the ball and he's instantly looking to swing to the next player. You got to turn that mindset into shooting the basketball, and that will allow him to jump as well. And then with J-Dub, I think one of his biggest uptakes will be just the growing reputation of himself. Whereas now everybody understands what a scorer he is, understands how he hits tough shots, and that comes with calls and fouls and getting to the free throw line. And as you improve your free throw line trips and the amount you take, you improve your point per game trips and you improve your point per game, production. And then that looks like a massive leap. So I think that you'll see him now understand how to utilize his strength and body control to gain calls this season. I think he'll be granted calls this season. I think that will lead to a higher uptick in production all the way around.
I think with him, you go look at his shots. If you go to Synergy and just look up every one of Jalen Williams' field goal attempts, a lot of them are really dang hard. He makes a lot of them. They're advanced level shots. If he, with this team, with the depth it's going to have and the additional perimeter shooting, you just give J-Dub 2 or 3 more shots a game that are just like easy looks, it's going to be next level. If he's making the tough shots and then he also gets a few easy looks, like that's a leap. Because right now, like the 18, 19 points he gets on a standard night, and it's his game. Like it's not a knock. It's a tough 18, 19 points a lot of times, So get this guy some easier looks. There's going to be more stuff ran for him. He's going to have more space because this is going to be an offense that you can't sag off or double as much because everybody will punish you.
Everybody is going to punish this team. But Nick, given that the Thunder are such contenders, given that the Thunder are picked to win the West, they also have to keep an eye on what's happening around the NBA. And so our top NBA storylines to watch, there's plenty out West. One of them that I'm just so curious to see is Memphis. I'm all in on Memphis this year.
Same.
I'm all in on a Grizzlies bounce back. I think that Edey can fill in the Steven Adams role, which whenever Steven Adams played for the Grizzlies, that's whenever you saw Ja at his best and you saw this team at their best. And so like Edey, this is the only environment where I would have liked Edey. I was not an Edey guy pre-draft, but this environment, protected by Jaren Jackson Jr. Defensively, I love it for the fit for himself, and I love it for the fit for the Grizzlies. So how do they look as one of my biggest NBA storylines? What are you keeping an eye on to keep track of around the NBA with the Thunder?
I am a Grizzlies guy as well. I think they'll have a great bounce back. Conversely, maybe a step back. The Nuggets. I'm not swinging as much as I see other people where like this team's just not good anymore. They still have the best player in the world. Jamal Murray is not cooked. Did he look horrible in the Olympics? He sure as hell did. He's still a very, very good player. I don't think they're going to be top tier this year. I think they'll be like kind of similar to the Clippers last year. Like they could host in the first round still for sure. They got the talent to do so. They could also be like a 5 or 6 seed, I think, pretty easy with how tough the West is. And we saw it last year, like the difference between 57 wins and 55 wins was like sliding down four spots. Denver's the team I got an eye on. I like the Russ acquisition. A lot of people don't. I think he gives you some juice that you wouldn't have had before. I think that situationally he can be an impactful defender. I just don't know if I buy that. I don't look at Denver the same way I have in previous years. I'll say that they're not as scary.
Yeah, certainly not as scary, certainly not as threatening as they were in previous years. But like you mentioned, it's a star-driven league. They have the best player in the world, so that's going to give them a fighting chance. I'm not completely out on them as many people are, but I also would no longer be afraid to say that they're no longer a team that has you shaking in your boots to face. I think that mantle's passed to OKC. It's passed to Dallas. I mean, look, I know that there's some rivalry between these two teams. You do not want to face Luka Doncic in a playoff series, period. Then you add Kyrie. Then you add in what Derek Lively can do. Then you add in a Jason Kidd, who, for all of his failures in the regular season, he is a heck of a playoff coach. At this point, you just have to tip your cap to him. And then they have Klay Thompson as well, who, if he can get hot, listen, he has a better chance to get hot than Tim Hardaway Jr. So no matter what you think about Klay Thompson as an individual, he's much better than Tim Hardaway Jr., who couldn't play dead in the Western last year. So the Mavericks did get better, and they did get better. I think that the Quentin Grimes addition is huge for them. The thing is with the Mavericks, I don't think that you're going to learn much about them in the regular season, just like you didn't learn about them last year in the regular season. I mean, they were sleepwalking. They made the massive deals at the deadline. They made a massive push into the playoffs, and then they went to the NBA Finals. This year, I don't think that they'll take it as seriously as other teams do. I think that they're going to look great whenever they play motivated basketball, but I'm curious to see what it looks like with Phoenix this year. I've been a Suns believer this season with my podcast with Joel.
Why is that?
Suns rant. I love Tyus Jones. I think that Tyus Jones is going to be an awesome pickup for them. And at the end of the day, if you give me a playoff series tomorrow, Tyus Jones at the helm, and then you have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker in an 8-man rotation, that's 4 of your guys, and then Grayson Allen's coming in bombing threes, I'd like to gamble on it. I think it's a worthy bet in a star-driven league that those guys could possibly get hot if you're talking about dark horses in the West. But is the addition being overstated right now because we just have nothing else to talk about in the NBA? It was one of the most recent acquisitions by a contending team. So I'm interested to see what they look like because last year, even during moments where they had success, it was clearly unsustainable. It was Kevin Durant shouldering the 38-minute load to get the Suns to a victory in a hard-fought game in February against Atlanta. Like, it was not sustainable at all when they had good games. Can it look more real this season is a big question for me, because if it can't, it quickly turns into, hey, this is Dallas, the Thunder, and the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, and that's it.
Yeah. I see the vision with Phoenix. I don't know if I believe the vision. One more for me, and it's out east, which obviously doesn't impact the Thunder as directly. But if we believe this team has a chance to go to the finals this year, you got to play a team in the East. You'd like that team not to be Boston, probably. And if it's a team other than Boston, that means it was a team good enough to get past Boston. But I think you'd rather play a team that got past Boston and is a little bit hot than playing actual Boston. They're just a complete team. And I think straight up, when you think about what makes the Thunder special, I think Boston has a phenomenal counter with similar perimeter defenders and a stretch big and a dynamic wing score. They have all the things that Oklahoma City does to counter. I've got my eye on the Sixers. If they can make some noise with the PG acquisition, among others, I've got my eye on Damian Lillard. The Bucks as a whole, but Damian Lillard specifically. We see with a lot of teams, chemistry is key. Like when the Nuggets won their title, they were a team that the year before were supposed to be really good with the Aaron Gordon acquisition. Took a little bit of time to mesh. This is make or break for them. I think if it meshes and Dame is awesome, that's a real threat in the East. If not, they might be cooked. But that's a team that, in theory, kind of like the Suns, I could see a world where they make some noise this year and they're really good in the playoffs. And so I'm just thinking about these teams that have a real shot, not even a real shot, somewhat of a shot of beating Boston that could be a finals opponent.
Nick, I cannot help myself but continuously fall in love with the 76ers. And I know I'm going to get burned again, as I have every single year of this show, picking the Sixers every single year. And they nowhere close to reaching their goals. by the end of it. But I'm once again all in on the Sixers this year out east. I think it's really hard to contend and not only contend, but to repeat as a champion. So Boston fighting an uphill battle there. But if any recent champion can go back to back, it is the Boston Celtics this year. So we'll get our official predictions closer to the start of the regular season. But Nick, this was a lot of fun. Let them know where they can find you on all your basketball work.
Crain NBA on Twitter, on X, rather, I should say, is where it'll all be culminated. I'm not a great tweeter. I forget to tweet a lot of my stuff out. I'm getting better at it. Rylan is holding me accountable. So if you want to read the stuff or hear the stuff or watch the stuff, that is where it'll be.
And Nick Crain has a lot of stuff out there about the NBA, about your Oklahoma City Thunder. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.